Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to try to understand one of the most remarkable moves ever played in chess. I learned about this move maybe 15 to 20 years ago from Tim Krabbe's excellent website Chess Curiosities. He ranked this move as the second best move ever of all time ever played, and most people do rank it very highly. And this game is Topalov has the white pieces, Shirov has the black pieces, and this was from 1998 in Linares. And here is the remarkable move. Actually, let's take a look at the position first and understand it, and then we'll reveal the move. So black is up 2 pawns. The pawns are going up the board. They're trying to queen at the top of the board here. And the players have opposite colored bishops, which does give the defending side some possible drawing chances. And this bishop is well placed because it's defending the square directly in front of the d pawn, and it's also defending the queening square of the a pawn. And the reason these opposite colored bishop endings do give you drawing chances is because when you control the squares in front of the pawns, you're controlling a colored square that your opponent's bishop cannot reach. The black bishop here cannot help the pawn push, and it cannot help this pawn queen because it can't lend any support to these dark squares. So white's bishop is well placed. Black would like to get the king up in a hurry to help the pawns promote. And white's king would like to come up toward the center of the board as well to stop the black king. So with all of that in mind, if you haven't seen this before, maybe press pause and try to find this remarkable move that Shirov played in the position as black. Okay, the move he played, which is quite shocking if you haven't seen it, is bishop to h3. Looks like the craziest move in the position. Any other move seems like a possibility, but this move just looks ridiculous. It's the only move where you're just putting your bishop where it can be captured. And you don't even get a pawn in return. You get nothing in return. So we're going to try to understand why he made this move and why it's winning and what the point of the move is. And before we do, let's look at some failed attempts by black to understand why that move may be necessary. So chess players have analyzed this to death, and I believe the conclusion is yes, that remarkable move is winning, but I don't think people are sure it's the only winning move, although nobody has proven any other winning moves in the position. Okay, so let's try some other things besides that crazy move. What if we just try to run our king over to the queen side here and help this pawn promote? What's going to happen if we play like king to d6? Well, that's going to give the pawn on f6 up, so white's going to take that pawn. But black wasn't worried about that. He's trying to rush to help his a pawn queen. He might help his d pawn queen too, but the white king is closer to that and can easily stop it. All right, but now the white king comes into the game. And both kings get better placed here. And this king is optimally placed because it's taking away these squares, and the white bishop here is taking away that square. So it's very hard for this black king to help this pawn promote. Let's see an attempt. a3. White takes time to play g3, just waiting. Maybe the king comes up here to try to help because he can't get in any other way, and pushing the pawn by itself is no good. The queening square is covered. So maybe he goes in here to help, hoping to get to this square. Well, that just gives white time to move the king over and protect that square. So there's nothing black can do in the position to help that pawn promote. So now these squares are covered, the black king is shut out, and it's just not lending a hand at all to that pawn. So black simply has no time at all. It wasn't even close. He has no time to run over to the queen side and help the a pawn promote. That white king can easily defend. So the other idea is Well, you want to get your king up into the game more quickly. Maybe you want to do it like this. Get it into the center of the board along these light squares. Well, your bishop is in the way. You can't move up here. The bishop has this square covered. So your bishop is in the way and you have to move it. Well, suppose you move it over here. Get it out of the way. Well, that gives white a tempo. He moves the king up. You move your king up, and he moves his king up and stops you from even getting to that square. So now you're not even helping this pawn push, much less this pawn. So this king is blocking you out, and black has no hopes to win this position. So that's just too slow. And now we start to understand Shirov's remarkable move, bishop to h3. He's vacating the square in order to get the king up quickly. He'd like to get it to this e4 square. And he's doing it not just randomly like this. He's doing it while gaining a tempo on that pawn. And Topalov takes the bishop, and there's the tempo that black needed. Black gets the king up now. White tries to defend, but black gets the king to this nice e4 square, supporting this pawn push. That's exactly what black wanted and why he sacrificed his bishop. Although you may wonder, did white have to take it? Well, first of all, let's see what happens if he doesn't take it and if he tries to get his king up in a hurry like this. Well, black still rushes forward with his king, and white can gain the opposition here and stop him. But then do you know what black's going to play here? He's going to take that pawn on g2 with check. And that gives black another passed pawn, by the way. He has 3 passed pawns now. And if white just moves his king away, black's going to easily win with those 3 passed pawns and his bishop. So white would take the bishop and allow the king to come up. And then it becomes very similar to what happened in the actual game. So if white doesn't take that bishop on h3, then black's going to take that pawn. And by the way, black can't save the pawn like this because that costs a tempo too, and black's going to get the king up. So Topalov understood all of that and thought that his best try was to take the bishop. And it is a good try because it turns out even here, black is only winning by 1 tempo. He's barely winning this position. And so I think that's also why this move is celebrated and is so remarkable, because it took a very deep calculation by Shirov to understand the position fully to the point where he could sack that bishop. Okay, so after Topalov took the bishop, Shirov gets his king up into the game here. And he does give up this f pawn, but he doesn't need it. Okay, white should take it. There's no other way to play here. For example, if he improves his king, that just allows this move, blocking the bishop, bishop moves, this check, king goes over, and then black saves this pawn. And now these 3 passed pawns are decisive. This bishop is babysitting the a pawn, and these 2 pawns are too much for the white king to handle. So white really doesn't have time to improve his king there. He has to snap off that 3rd passed pawn. And then black plays d4, blocking the bishop out. And so this pawn is threatening to queen now. And so there's only one move for white. He has to play bishop d7 to guard that square in front of the pawn. And then black improves his king. And then bishop to c5. And now here is where you have to make another very precise move as black. King to c4 is the only winning move. I checked this with the engine. For example, king here is just a draw. Okay. Well, even if you didn't understand the difference, you probably would play king to c4 anyway, because you're gaining a tempo on the bishop has to move, and then you're getting over to the b3 square to help the pawn promote. So you might as well gain that tempo on your journey to the b3 square. So it makes perfect sense. Okay, and once the black king got to b3, Topalov resigned. He realized he can't stop both of these pawns. Let's see how it might have finished. Let's look at 2 moves here. For example, maybe white attacks the d pawn, and tries to capture it and then guard the queening square here. Well, black will push it, and then the king can come up to attack it, and black's king can come and protect it. And there's really nothing, there's no stopping this pawn from pushing any further. So there's no way to stop this pawn once it pushed here. You can't stop it like this, and if you stop it like this, you're ignoring the A pawn. And as we saw, when the king comes up, then this king is going to help it promote, and there's just no stopping it. So that's not a good try. Bishop to f6 was no good. Perhaps a much better try is getting the king over to e2. And here's how black would win here. King to c2, threatening a check followed by promoting the pawn. So white has no option here. He has to defend this square, and he has to keep an eye on that square as well. So this was the only move. The pawn pushes with check, king goes to e3, and now it looks like white has everything under control because he has these squares covered. But the bishop is overloaded. It's trying to stop both pawns. So black just gives up the A pawn and then queens the D pawn. So the resignation by Topalov was correct. It was a lost position. All right, so remarkable move by Shirov, worth studying. I learned more about it by playing it out against an engine. I tried various things with the black pieces to see if there were other winning plans, and I couldn't really find anything. And by the way, the engine doesn't really understand the endgame very well. It just gives lots of moves the same score of about negative 2.0 in the position, including bishop to h3. But when you get further into it, then the engine starts to understand it a little bit better. Okay, well, I hope you learned something. I sure did. Thanks for watching.